Hello and welcome to the Yak, the Yards After Catch podcast, the wide receiver analysis. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking with Josh Shepardson at BChad50 about your top plays and GPPs and values and all these great plays here for it. At the wide receiver position for week 6. And starting off with your top play here, DeAndre Hopkins as an elite play, facing off against the Jacksonville defense that has looked absolutely horrible over the past 2 weeks. I mean, obviously a daunting task to try to stop the Patriots. They didn't even manage to stop them from scoring 50 points. So, the word stop is not in their vocabulary. Then we see last week, Doug Martin explodes for 3 touchdowns. Obviously not a wide receiver, but I mean, that's just the state of this defense. Yeah. It's a bad defense. It's almost like their offense and defense kind of switched because past few seasons they were at least, an adequate defense, but a horrible offense. And now the offense is doing work, which is almost better for players playing against them because, they're not going to get blown out as much as they had in years past. So yeah. DeAndre Hopkins, target monster, leading the league in targets. And I love Brian Hoyer. I'm a big Brian Hoyer fan. So that Hoyer-Hopkins duo is going to be one that I'm going to quite a bit.
75 targets in 5 games. That's an average of 15 targets a game. That's unbelievable. I mean, when you're getting targeted that much, you don't have to be efficient in reeling them in. His 42 receptions on 75 targets isn't a great percentage, but just because he's being targeted so heavily, you can count on the receptions. He's leading the league in receiving yards. He's got 3 touchdown grabs, and he's facing a bad secondary. I mean, the Jaguars are not good at stopping receivers at all, and he's not priced out of the realm of rostering. I mean, 85 isn't easy to budget for on FanDuel, but you can still work around it. You get a value play or 2 in there. We've got at least one value play that I like in terms of value, true value on all the sites, and it's easy to fall in love with DeAndre Hopkins this week, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to overlook a guy leading the league in multiple receiving categories right off the bat. And just an FYI, as someone who's been writing up the winning lineups and analyzing them, he's been on at least 75% of the $1 million winning lineups for the entire season, not in one week. So just so you know, like, this guy has been a staple on that. Not that he's going to be on the lineup again. I'm just saying that his production been so consistent, winning someone $1 million, and hopefully the next one's me, maybe you, but either way. Next guy. Made some people some money late last week, myself included there. Julian Edelman didn't quite see his normal volume of targets as the Patriots. I mean, it's almost like they were just bored with this one. They just waited till the end to blow this one open because it looked like they struggled in the first half. They kind of did, but then they just kind of did what they wanted in the second half. And Edelman in this matchup against Indianapolis, that if there's never a situation where Bill Belichick likes to let his foot off the gas, and especially in this particular game, we keep talking about the narratives, all that. None of that actually matters. What actually matters is that it's the Colts against the Patriots, and the Patriots have destroyed the Colts just about every single time since Peyton Manning's left.
I mean, just take a look at the over-under total for the Patriots. I mean, it's over 30 points. It's over 32 points for the Patriots. And, I mean, yes, they do have a little bit of balance getting the ball to Blunt and Deion Lewis a touch in the running game, but this is the Tom Brady show, and his top 2 pass-catching targets are quite clear. It's Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman. They're both target monsters. Edelman's great after the catch. He's got great rapport with Edelman, and I mean, if there were ever a time that Brady might want to throw for 10 touchdowns to show that he can air it out with a fully inflated football, I'm thinking this would be that time. So they're not falling into talking before the game, but when has a Patriots team ever talked trash before a game? You know that in that locker room they're quietly boiling, and they are ready to absolutely blow the doors off the Colts.
Yeah, they're the type of team that'll just sit there and maybe outside of Gronkowski, just not say a word and just destroy you. So it's still terrifying how good this offense is, and you want to have as many pieces as you can there. Allen Hurns next up. You did mention the missed practice on Wednesday. It doesn't seem like something that's going to keep him out of this game, more of a precaution from what I'm seeing. And as we've seen, this Jacksonville offense, the passing game in particular, has been great recently. And assuming that Blake Bortles is good to go, looks like he's still questionable, but likely on the right side of questionable. Allen Hurns has been a great value, and his price really hasn't risen on either site. And it's not like he's taking things away from Allen Robinson. Both these guys are having success. So, I mean, you really couldn't go wrong with either guy, assuming that Bortles is in. I mean, things change if Chad Henne plays. But obviously, with Blake Bortles in there, I mean, take your pick with either one of these guys. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, both are neck and neck for the team lead in receiving yards and receptions and every meaningful receiving category. Hurns actually leads the way for them in both categories. He's been remarkably consistent. He's exceeded 60 yards. He's reached or exceeded 60 yards receiving in every single game this year. He's caught touchdowns in 3 straight contests. He's posted exactly 116 yards receiving in back-to-back games. And I mean, what else can you ask for from an undrafted rookie or undrafted rookie free agent last year in his second season in the league? He's been everything the club could hope for and more. And Bortles' willingness to stretch the field and air it out to his receivers has really benefited Hurns this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Baltimore Raven here, and his name's not Steve Smith. More on him in a second. Kamar Aiken has been the de facto number 2, and this is still, a volume passing attack. We're starting seeing Joe Flacco throw the ball a ton, and it's going to be really hard not to this week, especially with Lorenzo Taliaferro now in the IR. You've got Justin Forsett banged up. He might not play. So Buck Allen could end up being the lead back, and it's not to say that he couldn't have success in this game, but you tend to think that he's going to be the change of pace type of guy, and it's going to be a pass-first attack against this terrible 49ers secondary. So really any reliable piece of this Baltimore passing attack that you can get your hands on, I'm on board with, especially Kamar Aiken at his really cheap price. I mean, only 43 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel is not even bad either for a guy that's seeing a solid amount of targets.
Yeah, and I mean, he's got a couple clunkers on the year, but by and large, he's been good. He's got 3 games of 75 yards receiving or more, and whether he's the number 1 with Smith out or the number 2 with Smith playing doesn't really matter. The Niners are 28th defending number 2 receivers and 29th defending number 1 receivers, according to Football Outsiders. So he's not going to draw a lockdown corner if Steve Smith is out, basically. And volume's been there. He's played well. Another one of those pleasant surprises this year that kind of came out of nowhere. Aiken really didn't do anything last year in his first season with the Ravens, but he's emerged as a quality number 2 for them this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big Kamar Aiken fan. It's not like, I think he looks good too. I mean, if you watch these games, it's not just he's getting force-fed the ball. I mean, he looks like a legitimately, not a number 1 receiver, but a perfect number 2 type for that offense. Next up, GPP play only, basically because we got some lingering injury concerns here with Odell Beckham Jr. Certainly a guy that if you hear he's going to be a full go prior to Monday night, certainly a viable cash game option. I mean, he's got a great matchup against the Philly secondary that's been bad, and even worse against number 1 wide receivers. So this is a phenomenal matchup. You're really just concerned about his health because Eli Manning has looked tremendous so far this season. And Odell Beckham, especially with Ruben Randle likely to miss this game, there's going to be a ton of targets going his way, especially as much as they're struggling on the ground.
Yeah, and odds makers have this set as a shootout, 49-point over-under total. The game has a spread within a touchdown, so this is going to be a game where both teams are going to put some offense on the board. And as long as Beckham's healthy, you got to love him. But the problem is it's a Monday Night Football game, so even if you're on DraftKings where you're allowed to swap players, if you're left with that uncertainty, it's a risk because your options are so limited come Monday night. You're stuck spinning down to a guy like Jordan Matthews if Odell Beckham Jr. is out, or if you use him as your flex, maybe spinning off to like a DeMarco Murray. But again, your options are limited, so there is some risk. Obviously, if signs start to point more favorably in favor of Beckham definitely play him in all game types. But if there is any lingering injury concerns or any question about his availability or pitch count or anything of that nature, you kind of got to take into account that volatility and take into account the risk that you're taking, and really probably limit him to GPP only.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. Moving on here to our next guy, Keenan Allen. As we know, the volume catch extraordinaire, but you have him listed as GPP option, which makes a lot of sense. We've seen him with some huge performances this year, but we've also seen him with a few duds relative to that production. Last week, 6 for 57 is a fine performance for most players, but a guy at Keenan Allen's price, That's not going to get it done. You need things like, he had a 12-catch game, a 15-catch game this year. He had a 2-touchdown game, was that 12-catch game. So you really need, he also had a game with 2 catches for 16 yards. So we know he has massive upside, but he's like the poster child for when you're explaining the difference between a cash game and a GPP guy, because a lot of people were on him last week, and granted it was a fine matchup, but Antonio Gates returning. We kind of wanted to see 1 week of how he factored back into the offense, and looks like Antonio Gates is back to being the most reliable target. So that'll probably take some of the pressure away from Keenan Allen and allow him to have some big upside here.
Yep, and the Chargers, they're big underdogs this week, double-digit underdogs, and I think game flow is going to work perfectly in the favor of Keenan Allen. Not that the Chargers aren't a pass-happy offense already, but if they fall behind Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense early, they're going to have no choice but to air it out, and that means a heavy dose of Antonio Gates and a heavy dose of Keenan Allen. So I think even with Gates' return, even with him being Rivers' likely top target, there's still enough football to go around for Keenan Allen to make a big impact in a game where the Chargers are going to have to try and win a shootout with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
Yeah, and speaking of big impact, Larry Fitzgerald, at his ripe old age, has had a resurgent type of year. He's been one of the more consistent wide receivers in football so far this year. We've seen him have some huge performances, and really the ones that he's had that have not been huge performances have really been really nice floors. We're talking FanDuel scoring, he's had 11 plus points in every single game, with his 2 highs being 29 and 33. Obviously, those were 2 and 3 touchdown games. Those are few and far between. But, you're looking at Larry Fitzgerald at a reasonable price around the industry in what is really not that tough of a matchup against a Pittsburgh secondary that's given up some big plays this year. So Larry Fitzgerald's still the number 1 target for Carson Palmer. And Carson Palmer, if you want to go on the narrative thing, he's got something against Pittsburgh here too. So if you want to play the narrative game all the way down the board, you can. And either way, though, Larry Fitzgerald looks like the Larry Fitzgerald we know. Great floor, big-time ceiling also.
Yeah, he's worked wonderfully with Carson Palmer and that Bruce Arians offense. Maybe it's not Bruce Arians' offense. He's the head coach. Maybe we should give the offensive coordinator some credit. But that vertical passing attack has been just done wonders for Fitz when Palmer's been under center. They've looked great together this year. Fitz is your top touchdown receiver this year. He leads the way. Ranks highly in receptions and receiving yards too, but that's remarkable since he barely cracks the top 20 in receiving targets. He's been unbelievably efficient. Nobody's been better in terms of yards per route run than Larry Fitzgerald this year. And against a secondary that really just doesn't have anybody to match up with him, there isn't a corner on Pittsburgh that could take him away. He should be in store for another good showing this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last up, the guy we kind of teased a little bit earlier should be returning because he is, love him or hate him, the guy is a champion. He's tough. Broken bones, ribs, whatever it may have ended up being. I kept seeing conflicting reports. He broke something in his back, which I can't imagine having that and walking or living or even like eating. But the guy now, a game and a half removed from breaking something in his back, now is practicing. Looks like he's going to be back. It's his final season. He's finishing strong. The guy's been tremendous. And like you mentioned here, he's had a ton of targets. Steve Smith Sr., if he's playing this week, I will have a ton of exposure because if he's on that field, he's going to produce.
Yeah, and there are not many receivers that can boast the type of volume that he gets when he's in the lineup. We like Kamar Aiken as a number 2, but he's a distant number 2 to Steve Smith when both are out there. It is the Steve Smith show. There's tunnel vision from Flacco when the 2 are out there. And it makes sense. You air it out, Steve Smith goes and gets it. And he's done just that this year. 29 receptions, 373 yards receiving, and a pair of touchdowns. And that's not with the full complement of games that he could have played. He's missed time this year. He's missed a game. He's missed part of another game. And yet he's still putting up big numbers. Big play threat against the secondary that just cannot stop receivers this year. The Niners have been terrible. And I'm loving Steve Smith this week, loving him in GPPs as long as he's a go. And that price point at DraftKings is just silly. $6,100 is such a bargain. Yeah, and only $6,700 on FanDuel too. So as soon as I hear that he's a full go, he's probably going to be in just about every one of my lineups because that price. It's a very low risk at that amount because you gotta imagine he's going to see 10 plus targets and he's very creative in
making something happen after the catch, if you will. I mean,
Yep.
if you've ever watched him, it seems like at least twice a game he does that move where he just spins violently, falls on his hand, and runs. And I mean, it's incredible the kind of strength this guy has. So love him or hate him. I'm not a big fan of him in general, but you got to love him from a DFS standpoint here.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and that is going to wrap things up for us here for the wide receiver analysis for Week 6. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Got lots of great content for NFL. College football coming out later on today as well, and very, very soon, NBA. So look forward to that, and we'll see you guys next time.